adding additional comments to the initial staff reports on this file that rental housing and multifamily housing in general meets a housing need within the community. So that was the preparation that the planner on the file prepared, and it's with council for consideration.
Thank you. And Councillor Gamble, what were your issues? That
well, one of the things that I was concerned about, I guess, was the no parking zone. It concerned me. I did drive down there and look at it again, and it does seem that the roadway is wider than many, and I don't know if that's correct, and maybe the planner could comment on that, but the width of that road appears to be wider than many of the developments that I've noticed in the community, and so it would seem to me that off-street or on the side of the street parking would be a possibility for this particular area.
Okay, thank you.
Through your worship, certainly at this point, on-street parking is permitted in the area. However, if it were to become an issue, it can be reevaluated and addressed by our engineering and roads colleagues.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Koza.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask, like, as through was all part of this, I thought there's supposed to be like a whole drainage study of the entire area, and how far along is that? Like, this development will go through before that goes through, is my understanding. And I'm just worried that we're going to go and put these developments in, and we're not going to have the proper drainage, and then we're going to have flooding issues and stuff like that, and then it's going to be up to the district to correct it, because we've approved these. They've been put in, and then afterwards we got to go back and try and rectify it. And as well, I talked with Scott about getting some of the ditches cleaned up as well too, and I was just wondering how far along that has all gone.
Your worship, I do see that our Director of Engineering, Matthew Salmon, is in attendance online and may be able to add some context with respect to the drainage studies more comprehensively within the district and the work that's being done in that regard. However, the hydrogeological work does include not just site-specific, but also context-based matters, and did address the fact that this would not exacerbate the issue, this new development.
Thank you. Is the engineering going to comment?
I'm here, Your Worship, if you'd like me to add my comment.
The concerns were issues that were raised at the public hearing were not addressed in the report. I thought that they were addressed, and that's the point of getting the drainage fixed, is because of development. But if there are the issue of whether it's suitable for the area, it meets our sector plan, it meets our OCP and a number of other things. So, but if you could speak to the drainage and whether it's how comprehensive in terms of whether it ties into what the master plan will be ultimately.
Yeah, so you know, considering we're at the rezoning stage right now, the hydrological study that's been done is you know, of appropriate level to allow us to consider the rezoning application, and if it was to go ahead, the detailed drainage plan and the specifications to that drainage solution will come out further at development permit stage, and will be subject to all the requirements of the subdivision and development servicing bylaw at that stage.
Thank you very much. All right, those are the issues that were raised. Have a motion? Moved and seconded. Todd, any further discussion? Those in favor? Opposed? Councillors Kozub and Reid opposed. Motion carried. Thank you. Third reading and adoption. All right. We're to public comment.
Your Worship, we may have BC Transit online.
Oh, do we?
I think Lila's there.
All right. BC Transit is online now, and
thank you, Worship. I do have one member that has successfully joined. We have two others that we were waiting for that have not, but if Levi is available and can turn his video on, then he can certainly present.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Thank you very much for having us here today. We're just having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Bronson, are you able to hear me?
Yes, or I can anyway.
Okay, excellent. I'm supposed to be joined by my colleague Bronson Bullivant, and he's just trying to get logged in here, I believe. Just give me half a sec.
Wait till transit talks.
Would it potentially be possible to move on to the next agenda item and have us come back once we've managed to sort out this technical challenge? Our apologies on this.
We can do that.
Where's the settings to turn on?
Thank you very much for your patience.
Okay. We'll go to item 8, which is public comment, and anybody wish to address council on items of concern or comment.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
My name is Shirley Joseph. I received a letter from our friends at Bylaw. I have a few chickens in my backyard and a little coop that's for one of my chickens. And I've been directed to remove the chickens and the chicken coop within the next 30 days. And I was under the understanding that I'm sorry, I don't know the law or it was on hold at the moment until a judgment was made. And at that time, I was willing to follow the rules there if there are new rules made.
Okay, thank you. Anybody from bylaw? I wasn't councillor or.
No, Arena is overseeing the bylaw enforcement at this time. Maybe she can respond to that.
Certainly, that was my understanding as well. So if you can please drop that ticket off to the customer service and we'll have a look at it for sure.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to address council? Whoa.
Can you please turn
you're-
on the microphone? Thank you.
And your name?
My name's Laura Simpson, and my name's Irina Leona. We're also here with one more resident from Delaware Road, Pat Fitcher. So we're coming to address our concerns regarding a certain property, which I'm sure bylaws is well aware of, and council probably is well aware of, is 11151 Deldor Road. So basically it has always been an issue for, well, as long as I can remember, it's been an issue, but in the last 6 months, the issue has exponentially increased, and basically now it's a squatting situation where there's new truck loads and car loads and taxi cab loads full of garbage and people coming to the property, which no longer has power or water to it. And so it's our understanding, and this was confirmed by the RCMP that we spoke to, oh gosh, I wish I knew the date, 2 weeks ago.
It was August 12th or 11th, one of those days.
And so basically our suspicions about what's happening on the property were confirmed by that RCMP officer. They are defecating on the property. Since there's no running water, they're just going wherever they deem fit. They're burning garbage. Basically, it's just a den of, you know, drugs, and it's a flop house. So we have had complaint after complaint after complaint.
Even theft.
There's lots of the theft's gone up. We're all uneasy, you know, in our own neighborhood, and we would like to know what can be done about this situation.
Okay, thank you very much. I did receive an email, and I think it has been raised with not only bylaw but RCMP. But Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do believe this was the property that we bought because the purchaser went delinquent on taxes. Is that not correct? So,
Your Worship, maybe you should ask our Deputy CEO and CFO to speak to this. She's been assigned to look into the matter.
Okay, is she?
Yeah, she's online.
Online?
I'm here. So that property did sell at tax sale, and we are looking into what our options are as far as being the purchaser at that tax sale. We'll have some more information back to council soon, and we hope to have a response back to the residents soon as well.
All right, so it is being looked at, and we'll keep you posted as to what all we can do. We don't really do all the solutions. No.
There are a number of legal implications tied to this property because it did sell at tax sale. So we're consulting legal on this. So it is taking a little bit of time. And
we can't really even talk about it in public because of the legal implications that we are considering.
Yeah, so.
A question though, so
yes,
whoever trespasses onto that property now, they are trespassing, aren't they?
I'm not sure that that is.
Your Worship, again, this is a legal matter that we need to consider in camera. Yes, of course, if people are not owners of the property and they are going into the property, obviously they're trespassing, but we're looking at all.
Good to know, because our CMP, when we spoke to them, they said it's not illegal to have the friends of the owner camping on that property. So now that we know that they are not the friends, we'll know that they are trespassing.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if they're friends or not of your property owner, so I can't make any comments there.
But when our CMP approached them, that's what they said. We are friends of the owners, but I doubt it.
That may be true. We don't know. We're looking into it.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful news, and thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else wish to address council? Second time of asking? Third time of asking? Here none, we'll move on then. Thank you for coming in, lady. And next up, development permit with variance, or we've lost, or who's doing that? Oh, there you are.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was a little slower than normal. I didn't know if it was transit time yet, so.
Oh, I'm not, they'll let us know, I think. Transit will let us know, will they, Raina?
We're ready to present whenever you guys have a break in your agenda.
Oh, we'll take it now, then we'll sit down our planner again.
Excellent.
That's okay, I'm getting my steps in.
Let me just see if I can share the appropriate presentation here. Okay. Let's slideshow from beginning. There we go. All right. Well, thank you again for having me here today, Your Worship and members of council. It's been a little while since we've seen each other, and I know there has been quite a bit of challenge in the last short period of time, but we're really grateful to be back and bringing this project back to you in its completed format. So today we're really just looking to bring forward the completed transit service guidelines document, a brief overview of it. Some of the key elements from this perspective are, first of all, we're presenting this primarily for information. Just as a heads up, this is going to be the information that we use to review the productivity of your current system and make recommendations for changes to your transit network and your transit system, in addition to some of the broader transit planning documents, such as the Transit Future Action Plan that was recently completed and the District of Lake Country Local Area Transit Plan, which is currently underway. Just one additional piece of background and context. We did actually have this document presented to the City of Kelowna Council earlier in 2020 as well, and they have since endorsed the document as well. So what are transit service guidelines? So transit service guidelines are composed of three primary elements. Some general design guidelines, so what comprises effective transit design. Service standards, what level of service do different types of transit services warrant, given their typology. And then performance guidelines. So for a given transit service, how do we expect that service to perform? relative to other routes within the system. So those are the three key elements. So why are they important? One of the key considerations is that we want to ensure that resources are used effectively within your community, and as well to ensure that there's sort of an acceptable minimum level of service quality provided as well. So a balance between those two elements. Another key element is that it provides a consistent and fair approach for guiding transit investments within your community, both in terms of optimizing your existing service and then also looking to expand new transit service down the road. As well, the development of this particular document was really helpful in the development of the Lake Country Local Area Transit Plan service proposals. So council may recall, I believe it was last fall when we had the special meeting and talked through some of the proposals that were in that plan. These guidelines were really helpful for helping to pull together those particular proposals. In terms of the process, this document has been a long time in the making. So we actually started this process in 2018 along with the Transit Future Action Plan. And so we engaged on the transit service guidelines at the same time we were engaging on that long range planning document. And then as well, it did include some pretty significant analysis in its development, and we collaborated with local staff throughout the Kelowna region, including District of Lake Country staff, every step along the way. So the first key element of the transit service guidelines, as I mentioned, was design guidelines. So one key consideration is we wanted to look at how effective transit design within the Kelowna region might vary depending on the surrounding land use characteristics. So what we did is we actually separated Kelowna into two separate areas, sort of our transit core area and our transit coverage area, because the type of service that will serve those areas effectively varies depending on density and a number of other considerations. There's also some sort of key network design considerations that were included in this document, and an overview of some infrastructure design guidelines that are really helpful for your local staff when they're looking at bus stops, and then as well between ourselves at BC Transit and your local staff when we're looking at other key considerations like transit signal priority, transit priority measures like queue jumper lanes, dedicated transit lanes and right of way, and other key considerations like that. So as I mentioned, this is the separation between the core and coverage areas within the Kelowna region. You'll see that the transit core boundary identified by the dark blue line was what we actually established through the Transit Future Action Plan process. And how this was developed through that process was a combination of looking at existing densities within the community, but also facilitating feedback from local staff and councils in terms of where you felt in the future that we should be looking at providing a higher level of service. So that exterior line was the original transit core boundary, but we also just wanted to present the actual transit density, and so we can see the comparison there. So up in Lake Country at the top of that map, you can see there's a pretty big differential between what we had sort of flagged as the transit core boundary and what we would actually define as the transit core boundary based off of density within your community. So I think this discrepancy is a big part of why we decided to undertake the Lake Country Local Area Transit Plan, and I think we're going to develop some really effective transit network options that will help improve the efficiency and effectiveness of transit in your community moving forward. In terms of network design, there's some sort of key elements that comprise effective transit in general. You want it to be as fast, frequent, and reliable as possible. As well, the more direct your service is, the more likely people are going to want to ride it. But of course, there's always that trade-off between coverage and service directness and speed. So finding that right balance within any given community context is really critical. So the second element for the transit service guidelines was the service standards, which, as I mentioned, really it just comprises the basic level of service we would expect for a transit service of a particular type. For example, local transit versus frequent transit versus rapid transit. And the service standards include standards for both your existing transit system and as well for new proposed transit services. I think one of the most important elements in the service standards that I want to elaborate on a little bit more is the elements that would underpin our recommendations around expanding transit to new areas. I think that one one key factor in an effective transit system is ensuring that when we expand to a new area, that area is going to actually support the level of performance that we would expect for a service of that type. And I know historically we could have done that better within this region. So I think moving forward, we've got some new tools, we've got some new analysis that will really help support justifying and rationalizing new service across the region. So you'll see here at the bottom, I've got a couple examples from your community, including on the bottom right, that's closer to your little town center near Beaver Lake in Maine. And then that's sort of about the closest to your core, the only real area in your community that would fit within our core classification currently from a density perspective. And then I believe this example is from your Copper Hills, Sherman Drive area, which is sort of a stereotypical coverage transit area. As part of this process, we also looked at the density within a 400-meter buffer of all of the routes within the Kelowna Regional Transit System, and used that to help set our targets for these various new services. And so one of the ways we did this is we looked at that level of density with each route, and then we also looked at the performance of each route. And by looking at those two factors, we were able to set a target that seemed to that would seem to ensure that if we were to create a new service with that level of density, it should be meeting our performance guidelines. You'll see here that your two routes, the Route 23 and the Route 32, are two of the three lowest density routes within the Kelowna Regional Transit System, with the Route 22 Peachland coming in a little bit lower. Another key consideration from a service standards perspective is how do we set priorities for investment within a transit system? And what we find is for an effective transit system, you can look at it sort of like a pyramid. So you need to make sure that the bottom is operating effectively before you start looking at moving up that pyramid. So first step is really just ensuring that your transit service is reliable, safe, accessible, and operates sustainably. That's critical. So if your transit isn't operating on time, service reliability is poor. If you're passing up passengers on a current route, of course we would want to address that first. Then same thing, as we get higher up the pyramid, eventually you get to improving service levels and then also expanding transit service to new areas. The third element for the transit service guidelines is the performance guidelines itself. So once again, we look at performance guidelines both at a system level and at a route level, and that really helps us sort of track the health of the transit system overall and help us to identify where some optimization or some intervention in areas of the transit system may be warranted. We've also added considerations for customer satisfaction into this performance guideline document. So that's an interesting new addition that we look to incorporate. So you can see here, there's two tables that show the system level performance guidelines we have for the transit system. So we're looking at rides per service hour. So in other words, how many passengers are we getting for every hour of service out on the road, average cost per passenger trip, cost recovery, and then as well customer satisfaction, which we've set at a target of about 75% of satisfied or very satisfied, and we've varied anywhere between 63 to 77% with that metric over the last 6 years. Then even more critically, you could argue for a local area such as Lake Country is the route level performance guidelines. So once again, we developed these, as I mentioned, by looking at the relative performance of each of our routes within the system by route type classification. So you can see here we've got it separated into rapid transit, frequent transit, local transit ridership, local transit coverage, and then also targeted services. And so we've set boardings per service hour as one of those key metrics, and then on-time departures, so the proportion of trips that are arriving within 1 minute early to 3 minutes late of its scheduled time. You can see here, so this is the route level rides per service hour performance guideline graph. So you can see horizontally, we've got the various targets. The light gray is representing local coverage. The dark gray is representing our local ridership routes. And then the blue and the orange, respectively, are representing your frequent transit routes and your rapid transit routes, respectively. So really one of the key elements here is the Route 23, which is currently operating at the frequent transit level, the frequent transit network service levels in the peak. And then as well, your Route 32, the Lakes, which is a local coverage route. Both of them are underperforming in comparison to other routes of their route class when you compare it to the Kelowna regional transit system as a whole. And so when we were going through this process, this was one of those key deciding factors where we decided we need to look in a little more detail at the District of Lake Country's network and look at that as part of a local area transit plan. In terms of applying the guidelines, so every year, BC Transit does something we call an annual performance summary, where we look at the productivity and performance of the transit system as a whole. And then as well, we're starting to also look at the route level. So I think that's the critical processes. We'll be comparing the performance of the system to these performance guidelines and service standards, and using that in addition to your long range plans, like the Transit Future Action Plan, the Transit Future Plan, and the upcoming local area transit plan, to really help guide proposed changes to your transit system and future investments to your transit system as well. That's everything I have for you today. Really looking forward to any questions you may have, and we'll do our best to answer any of those questions.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor McKenzie. First up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thanks for that presentation, Levi. I think you can hear me. I'm just curious, living in Oyama and having a bus going by there. When we met with you last time, we said that Ismith coverage would be cut back to out to the corner, and I'm just curious when that is. I keep getting asked by locals, and I just don't know what to tell them.
That's an excellent question. So through the chair, my current understanding is that Route 90 change is looking to take place early fall 2020. So I don't have the exact date on me, but I do believe it's either closer to the end of September or early October was my most recent understanding. But I can certainly follow up with your local staff and provide an exact date. Okay,
if you could do that. And there's 2 buses that go by. So is that both of them are going to be reduced? Because they go
to my understanding, it's only the Route 90 that serves along that corridor currently. You said Oyama, correct?
Yeah, there's 2 buses. They're about a minute apart. They go by. I get to watch them go by the front window. So.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So one of them is probably heading northbound to Vernon, and the other is probably heading southbound to UBCO in Kelowna.
So both of them are getting cut.
To my understanding, they're not being cut, but the route will remain on Palmawash Parkway, and we'll be looking to establish new bus stops on Palmawash Parkway at the intersection with the roadway that goes to Oyama.
Okay, sounds good.
So it's a little bit of an extra walk, but that is currently the plan to the best of my understanding.
Okay, and just one other question, if being that's more people will go to that corner, as far as putting a proper bus stop there, that's something that is on our dime to do that?
That is my understanding. I'm not sure if there's anyone with your local staff right now who can speak to that in any greater detail. Perhaps
right now. Okay, no, that's all right. I just wanted to hear that because obviously, if people got to walk a little farther, it would be nice to have somewhere they can sit out of the rain, or the snow when we do get it.
Okay,
thank you.
I have Councillor Scarrow. I think you're familiar with. You're on.
Hi, Levi.
Councillor Scarrow.
Welcome.
Fantastic to see you again.
What did you say?
Fantastic to see you again.
I bet you're right about that. I just got a couple of thoughts and concerns. I appreciate the fact that those changes to the 90 are occurring, and you said in early fall. The changes to our paddles happen on September 7th, so I believe that's the day that change would occur as well, just for clarification. Costs and revenues is what I'm concerned about. You've made a wonderful plan and based it on history. The history has changed and COVID's come and the ridership is down 80% or was and has slowly rebuilt back up. The other part of it is BC Transit's adopted the policy, if you like, of no money gets to ride anyway. And the instruction to the drivers is if someone comes up with no money or no money for a fare, our job as drivers is to inform them of the fare, not to collect it, and to offer them a transfer so that they don't bother any other bus riders through the day. Well, let me tell you, Levi, the young people learn things real quick. And right now, there isn't a high school student in Kelowna that has $250 in their pocket. They just don't have any money because they know they don't need to have any money. So the discussion between bus drivers is, if you're gonna accept free rides from some people, why not accept free rides from all people and recover costs in another way? The cost that you're banking on, I think that somewhere in your report there talks about cost per ride and stuff like that at $2.87 is our goal. $3 and some odd cents is the actual. And I believe now through the COVID year that you're probably going to see that number double, cost per ride. And when cost per ride doubles, that means revenue shortened, and that means either BC Transit or the partner municipalities have to suck it up and take up the cost or reduce service. So I'm kind of wondering if you, BC Transit, has any thoughts or solutions in mind, or that would take the existing plan that you've made based on history and bring it into a more real world that we're living today, a new normal, if you like. And the second question that I have for you is the development of a new transit yard out by the airport in the city of Kelowna. I'm kind of wondering how costs will be shared for that, if you could kind of highlight that.
Yeah, so through the chair, both fantastic questions. Unfortunately, both of those questions sort of fall outside my regular role, so I wouldn't say I have clear answers to both of those questions available in my back pocket. I could certainly have someone look into those two particular questions and bring those back to your local staff if you would like.
I would like that, Levi, and would consider it a service. Thank you.
Thank you. Arena, did you have comment, concern?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a comment to let you know that Matthew Salmon, our Director of Engineering, is available to speak to the Oyama bus service if council would like.
Okay. Are you there, Matthew?
I am, Your Worship. Yeah, just to follow up on Councillor Mackenzie's questions there. So currently the new bus stops are due to be constructed for use by the end of September, which is when the existing bus stop on Young Road will be decommissioned and the new bus stops put into service. And currently there is no plan to put bus shelters on them. They will be on the district's dime if we choose to do so, which obviously come up to an expense. But the plan right now is just to put the urban standard stop in there, which is essentially a concrete plinth for those changes that are due in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you, Matthew. All right, we'll go back to questions to Levi. Councillor Gamble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for joining us, Levi. I was very interested in this local area transit plan for Lake Country. I think that it's really needed because, we are building all kinds of developments, not us, but our community is. And we've really got transit as a very integral part of our official community plan. I think everyone on council is very supportive of transit, but the public has not bought into this. Now, there are reasons for that. I don't know what those reasons are. I mean, if you are going to get to work in a timely manner and it costs you less than taking your car, why wouldn't you use transit? So maybe that's not happening, and that's what we need to rectify. We have a development of over 5,000 people in the lakes. We have Lakestone, which is growing very quickly. We have an area over, as you mentioned, you took a picture of that one over on above Lodge Road, where I know there was a lot of interest in taking transit, but there were issues. And that one in particular, I do know, I don't know if there's still the issue, but they were problems of timeliness, being on time. Kids were trying to take the bus into Kelowna to French immersion. The bus was late. They had missed the bus, you know, it just didn't work, or missed their classes. And those are things we need to rectify if they're still existing. And that's, I'm sure, your job. You're looking into that, and that's good. Because I think we as a council are really keen to see that transit use increase. But we know that it's not serving its purpose right now. So we've got to find the answers, because it is something that we need to think about more and more in the future. And I'm wondering when you're expecting to give us an answer on that. If you could answer that, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Great question. So through the chair, at this point, we're looking to restart the local area transit plan process this fall. So we were about to go out to public engagement in April of this year when COVID really hit. And so unfortunately, we were unable to travel for engagement, so we had to postpone it. So we will be looking to dust that engagement process off and re-implement that this fall. At this point, I believe we're planning to do it online primarily to start with, and see what kind of uptake we get through that process. And then we can assess and see if any further engagement is required after that. But to respond to both yourself and Councillor Scarrow's questions, it's a great point. Travel patterns have definitely changed in our post-COVID environment, and I think it will continue to change over time. So I think that that's one of the critical values of having postponed that engagement. So when we go out to ask the public about what they think both about these proposals and about transit generally, we're going to start to get a better understanding of the current travel environment for people. As well, I think when we're looking to wrap up that plan, we'll also be reassessing performance sort of in our post-COVID environment as well, and ensure that these service proposals still are the best options for your community given your current ridership patterns. So I think the timing is perfect in the sense that now we're starting to see some level of stabilization in ridership patterns, and then we're going to be able to reach back out to the public and get their feedback and reassess performance and make sure we're bringing something effective back to your council. And so in terms of timeline, I don't have that at the tip of my fingers. I think we had allowed sort of 8 to 12 months for that process originally. And so we kicked that off early 2020. Since we're restarting in fall, like I think you could probably see that wrapped up sometime in mid 2021 would be my guess.
Thanks. I just want to add that there is a nice little ad about wearing masks on the bus. And I like that one, a little bit musical, some young kids on there too, and other people. And I think it's very positive. I do think it's important that a clear message be sent that riders will be safe and that people will be wearing masks. I think that this has been an issue in our public relations in general on masking and safety. And it's something that I think a clear message is important. If you give well, it's okay, or you don't have to, that is not a clear message. And I like that because it was a kind of entertaining and positive way of saying, yeah, wear your mask.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Levi, for your presentation. You answered a lot of my questions to do with the graphs, so I appreciate that. I just have one question that kind of builds on Councillor Gamble's questions and concerns, and it's around the customer satisfaction. Now, I noticed you put there a nice little range historically from 63 to 77 and kind of said it's over the last 6 years. Now, what was it last year? Because you had actual. So I'm just coming from the point of view of if it's 77, that's great, you're exceeding. But if it's 63, then naturally customer satisfaction is declining. So at the moment, I don't know which way the line on the graph goes. So I just wondered if you could let me know what that was. And my follow-up question is, do you have that information specifically for Lake Country ridership, so that because obviously those riders who are maybe in a more frequently served area might have a different perception than those who are maybe in our area. So those are my two questions.
Excellent question. So through the chair, we conduct this onboard survey biannually currently, so every 2 years. I believe, and once again, don't quote me, and I can look into this. My understanding is it sort of kind of went up. It went up and then it dipped down just a little bit with the most recent one. But I can certainly confirm that and get back to local staff on that particular question. And the second question, we can certainly, I believe this was actually asked by council before. So I do know we tracked which routes the survey respondents were taking when they were surveyed. So that would be the only opportunity we could have to look at that element. So we wouldn't know for sure where people were living, but we would know which routes they were taking, and we could identify, for example, which of our surveyors were on the Route 23 or Route 32 when they were taking that survey. My guess is the sample size will be pretty small, and it would probably be, I don't think it would be a very statistically significant sample to look at specifically for the Lake Country area. So I'd be a little hesitant to present that information, just given that it's a regional survey. So
I suppose it depends on the ridership. If the ridership is small, as your presentation entailed, then a smaller sample size is perhaps not as much of an issue, statistically speaking, than if we were looking at something like Kelowna, for sure. And I think speaking to Councillor Gamble's point and Councillor McKenzie, we are going to be serious about encouraging mobility and alternative use of transit. We have to give people a safe place to wait, and somewhere that is out of the elements and the rain and the snow. If we do want people to use this service, they have to be able to use it in relative comfort in some of the inclement weather, or indeed in 38, 35 degrees of heat. I think providing a shelter would be a good thing if we can stretch the budget to that somehow.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Arnold.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Levi. I'll bang a bit of a broken drum here, but your key metric is reliability, especially for this community. If you miss the bus, or if the bus doesn't come, you're not going to take the chance the second time, because you've got most likely a commute of at least 15 kilometers. It's not like in downtown where I missed the bus, I'll get a cab. It's reasonable, it's affordable, or I can ride my bike, or I can walk. If the bus doesn't come, then your options are limited. And, you know, after having had a daughter who took the bus on a regular basis to go to university here, the bus often didn't come. So, you know, she's not going to show up on any of your surveys because she just says, okay, well, the bus isn't reliable. I can't depend on it. It's important to me that I get to where I'm going. So I'm going to have to find alternates, and I'm going to build alternates into my life. And I am going to put the idea of transit out of my head. And, you know, I realize that this is a hard problem to solve, and don't get me wrong. I totally understand that, but I think that it's the most important thing that you guys have to solve if you're going to get people to ride the bus, because you have to get these kids and train them. It's pretty hard to take older people who are used to driving everywhere, like me, because we've had to drive everywhere for years, and that's what we do. But if you can get the younger generation to be, this is what we do, we take the bus. But right now you're losing them on a regular basis in our community. And so I'm not surprised that some of our numbers are lower, because they just don't feel it's a reliable way to get around the community or anywhere. So, and, you know, again, I know it's a hard problem to solve for sure, but I think that the majority of the efforts should be going towards that key metric in this customer satisfaction thing. I can't see another metric it's even close to as important as that, especially for our community.
Thank you. Jamie, Director of Planning, did you have a question for Levi?
Not a question for Levi. I'll email him later, but thank you, Your Worship. Just some comments around the local area transit plan. Obviously, working really closely with BC Transit in that regard, and Levi covered this current status very well, so I won't repeat him. But I do know that a big part of what we're looking at, as well as not only like the current status quo, but also a lot of our discussions with respect to mobility within the community, land use, our growth, and how we want to change the community, not just in terms of incrementalism, but also What are some big leaps that we can take as a community, and maybe some more of the philosophical side of things, but I think really some of the exciting sides of things around how can we change, like actually make some real positive changes with respect to ridership, get a convenient, reliable, enjoyable service. And I think those were some of the words used in the vision that was set with council around that local area transit plan. So definitely very excited to continue collaboration with BC Transit as we re-engage with the public communication part of it.
Good, thank you, Brent. I'll let Councillor Scarrow ask the last question, and we'll have to get on.
I'll just wrap it up, Levi. First off, I appreciate Councillor Ireland's comments on reliability and definitely agree with them out here in the outlying areas. You can't get a more important aspect to our community service. And I do believe that our service is close to reliable, but not quite there yet. Secondly, I'd like to comment and compliment BC Transit on the safety measures they've taken through the COVID crisis. I, as a driver, have never yet felt unsafe. I believe that the measures that BC Transit implemented were quick, efficient, and effective in the fact that so far none of us have contracted that disease. I do wonder about testing for COVID and why frontline workers like bus drivers maybe haven't had a universal testing or an opportunity to get tested at the bus garage. It seems to me that's something that BC Transit could do in the future to make sure and ensure drivers' safety. The only other question I have that came out of the discussions was learning that the 90 will be changing its route on sometime in September, and it'll be eliminating, I think it's 3 stops within the Oyama Isthmus that it'll no longer be servicing. Is that correct? Okay, so how much less money do we have to pay because we have 3 less stops that we get serviced? That's the question. I'm quite serious.
So through the chair, that's a great question. There's a local cost share agreement between, I believe it's the Regional District of the North Okanagan and the District of Lake Country. So it's something that BC Transit doesn't actually manage. It's a specific agreement between your 2 local government parties. So I would have to defer to local staff to speak to the details of that particular change.
Thank you. And that's all the questions there are. Thanks very much, Levi, for coming online with us and handling it all by yourself. Well done. Thank you. All right, we'll get on to now development. Development applications. You're up again.
Just getting the presentation loaded, Your Worship. So good evening again, Your Worship, members of council. Just going to present a brief presentation on a development permit amendment, as well as a variance to council's DP guidelines, zoning requirements for retaining walls. The properties being discussed this evening are along Celeste Road and Santina. The subject property is within the Hillside Natural Environment Multiple Unit GHG Reduction Development Permit areas, and is like a currently zoned RU6 2-dwelling housing, as well as RM2 low-density row housing. To put it into context, the property is located up through the Sage Glen neighborhood through here. You can see these properties here. These, I believe, 6 properties are duplex currently, and then there's more multifamily located along the west portion of the subject property boundaries. Aerial property map, just showing it a little bit closer, giving a bit more context. This is obviously prior to some of the development taking place. So with respect to a bit of background, the initial development permit that council had considered was issued back in 2016 after being approved by council in 2015. So the only items being brought forward tonight are in fact amendments to that development permit. So for consideration, the main things that council is looking at tonight are changes to the landscape plan throughout the site, particularly or in some cases, the landscaping for the duplexes, which has already been completed and is different from what is originally approved. There's also the addition of parking spaces to the RU6 two-dwelling housing properties. There's a change in configuration to the number of parking garage structures proposed on the RM2 low-density row housing property, as well as change to the material of the parking structures to allow for corrugated metal. We'll have some visuals to help council take a look at that. In terms of the variance that council will be considering this evening is a variance to overheight retaining walls within the RM2 low-density row housing property. So the property to the most west that you saw, the larger chunk of property with the greater amount of density on it. And that is to vary it from 1.5 meters to a maximum of 3 meters. And then with all of this, we're just looking at the considerations within those DP areas. So excuse this is a lot of text, but I will soon get to some visuals to help tell the story. With respect to landscaping, the applicant is intending to xeriscape the majority of the property. So looking at planting drought tolerant, often native species that require minimal irrigation, reducing the water demand, and xeriscape planting options that are highly varied, and need not promote sterile landscapes. So the key changes from the original landscape plan include eliminating lawns significantly, which will reduce that water demand, substituting rock mulch for bark mulch. Usable open space, particularly for the 3 duplexes, has been reduced. However, a community vegetable garden and communal open space with fine crushed surfacing has been added, and I can show you a visual of that as well. And I'll get right onto that. If you look at the slide before you, Your Worship, these are the duplex properties along the east portion of that initial aerial map.
I have questions.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And sorry to jump in, Jamie. We do need to share your screen so that the public can see it.
Of course, my apologies. I literally made a joke about this in advance. No, with it's not funny when you have to explain it. Desktop. This one right here? Perfect. Thank you. Good thing I hadn't gotten to the visuals yet. Hopefully everyone can see that. Thank you so much for letting me know. Should I start from the beginning? Thank you, Your Worship, for your patience. So with respect to what I was just covering, getting to the visuals, you can see the duplex properties located along here. There's 3 properties on this portion of the road and 3 properties there that are already built. And the landscaping for the multifamily site, these buildings are already in progress. The covered parking is what's being largely considered through the DP amendment with respect to materials and size and configuration. As mentioned in the landscaping plan, the move away from lawns and to some communal space, such as a community vegetable garden, you can see right up along here on the property boundary, for example. For some additional visuals, Your Worship, just looking at the existing properties as they're built, you can see the additional turf parking spaces, like permeable parking spaces, located at the development. You can see some existing site photographs and how the properties are currently situated and already currently landscaped, as well as along Santina. And now into the multifamily site. And you can see that, as mentioned, the construction is well underway with respect to the initial DP. And then this area right in around here, which is where much of the parking will be constructed. And you can see the need for retaining walls, which is the subject of the variance. Also being considered by council, as mentioned, is the corrugated metal. The developer had provided some examples of what that corrugated metal may look like, or may be applied to the parking structures on site, which would be visible to the owners of the multifamily properties. And again, looking at the variance for the retaining walls, Your Worship, you can see that the retaining wall, in fact, tiers from about 5 feet, which is allowed under council's existing zoning bylaw, up to 10. And in fact, you can see that the covered parking areas act as retaining because they're built directly into the hillside. Some of these are already approved through the existing development permit, but you can also see these uncovered parking stalls in and around here, which have an equal wall connecting between the covered parking areas, also with a 10-foot retaining wall. Now, the developer along this entire area is looking to vegetate the wall. So over time, ivy, for example, will grow down along the walls, reducing the visual impact. However, the visual impact will be largely to the people who, in fact, will be living right there. So, Your Worship, the preferred staff option is that the DP amendment be approved and that the variance also be approved and that a landscape bond be required, and with the standard 5 months authorization date and submission of all the requirements. As this is a variance as well, there is the opportunity to hear from the public, and I do believe the applicant is in the audience.
Thank you. I have questions from staff or from council. Councillor Scarrow.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much. A little bit convoluted. There's an awful lot of aspects to this, so I'll kind of run through them. I don't particularly have any issue at all with including xeriscaping as a possibility for landscaping requirements within. Is it a direct control that we have here, or?
No.
No, Your Worship. It is a low-density row housing and RU2 and RM2 and RU6 zoning.
All right. The one variable or variance that they're asking for that I do have concern with is the retaining wall. After seeing your visuals, understanding that probably 75% of that retaining wall will be hidden by parking garages and the rest would be covered by growth, I don't have such a big issue, but I have received over the last 3 or 4 years, three, I think, complaints from people who live up on Celeste now, where rocks roll into their backyard. And my concern is if you have a 10-foot wall and nature brings a rock rolling down the hill, it's going to land in your backyard like a bomb. And if there's cars parked under there, they'll hurt the car, which isn't too bad. But if there's kids under there, it could be real dangerous. So, but then when I look at the topography there, I don't know if I see a hill large enough to produce that kind of danger. So maybe the proponent could speak to that. But other than that, the variances they're asking for, I don't have issues with.
Certainly, Your Worship, and just to clarify, the only variance is to the retaining wall height, which tiers up and down, and then to amend the existing DP, which Council has already issued and in fact amended shortly after the initial DP was issued. But the applicant can certainly speak to that. And I did provide the landscaping plan, which gives a feel to maybe how the site on the western portion, so the top of the screen, maybe a bit more tiered before that retaining wall.
It is. Yeah. Before you go, I have other questions from Council. Councilor McKenzie.
Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ireland.
I didn't have you down.
Thanks, Jamie, for that presentation. I was up at the location there and looking at this, and I got some pictures of the houses beside this development and down, and that whole bank is rocks, and I can see why they have rocks rolling in their backyard. So if you even look at one of the pictures you've shown of the side that is existing worked on, that's already cut away. If you keep going, the one of the hillside, no, oh yeah, right there, the bottom one. So if you look closely at the bottom one, you can see where the compactor is. And look just to the side, you can see the rocks sitting on the bank already. So as soon as you cut in a little farther, that's all rock, that whole hillside. So I just, you know, when you're putting retaining wall in there, that size, you are going to get rocks coming down that hill, that whole side. So I got pictures of all those houses if you go along there. So I'm not really comfortable with a 10-foot retaining wall, I'm not really sure how you're going to do that when you got solid rock to start with. It seems like a little bit of a tough one to approve on my end anyways, and looking what I'm seeing there. So
Okay.
other than that, I just happen to know people that live in these houses, and they did say that they're happy with the landscaping, not having lawn and so on, and they're happy with what's been done there. So no issues I see on the rest of it. It's just that retaining wall I'm having issues with.
Thank you.
And through your worship, the developer may wish to speak to the logistics of constructing that.
Yeah, and I have Councillor Reid. No, I didn't even have you down.
I'll get you some new glasses if you want.
Well, I asked if this was your hand raising, and you said
No, that was well earlier.
I'll take Councillor Reid, and then I'll come to it.
He always gets the girl.
I'll take it where I can get it. Okay, so Jamie, thank you. Couple of things, really questions that hopefully the developer can address. The xeriscaping, is there membrane under the xeriscaping? And if so, is it permeable or impermeable? Just thinking that if it is impermeable, then eventually you've basically got the same thing as concreting it. There's no runoff for the water. It's just going to pour down the hill. So just want to know about that. Not overly happy with the corrugated sheeting. I mean, the examples that have been shown, a majority of them are in Kelowna, and they are a mixed media usage. So again, I would like that to see what the developer has to say. I mean, basically a whole line of garages with nothing but corrugated sheeting is not particularly attractive, and if it's planned to blend it with others. I am with Councillor Mackenzie on the height of the retaining wall. I'm looking at this as if it, had come initially, and I think 3 meters, 12 feet is significantly high. And also I am concerned about the proposals. Ivy, according to the BC Invasive Species Council, is a invasive species, and we should not be encouraging its use in landscaping, as far as the BC Invasive Species Council says. So I'm a little concerned that we're using that. And also the fact that it took 27 years for the ivy to cover the wall that was given as an example is a little bit concerning. So I appreciate the idea of greening the wall, and I wonder, given all of this discussion, if there is an option to think of an alternative solution, such as a green wall, or putting a stepped wall with more plantings in it that are obviously not invasive, to kind of give that effect, but without the negative consequences. So those are my 3.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, I went up and had a look today. And quite honestly, I was actually quite disappointed. The houses themselves were quite nice, but the xeriscaping that they talk about, that it's, I would like to see that a professional xeriscaper is engaged, because that's not xeriscaping. I actually phoned the xeriscaping thing to ask them about it, and Councillor Reid brought up an important question. There can never be a membrane underneath it. They don't want rocks. Rocks heat the landscape. They prevent the plants from being water property. And if you drive by those new houses today and you see the 6 or 7 shrubs that are placed in the field of rock, they're all dead, most of them. So it's contributing nothing to the environment but heat. And I happen to live next door to a house that's done something similar. And if you walk in front of my house where there's a lawn, and you walk in front of his house where there's not, there's an appreciable temperature difference. So we're not doing ourselves any favors by rockscaping anything. It's a cheap way out. Throw some landscape fabric down, throw a bunch of rock on, and I frankly can't support that at all in any way. It's not xeriscaping. Xeriscaping means selecting the proper plants for the environment that are low water tolerant. It means mulching properly. A xeriscape garden can be as full as any garden is, and if you go to H2O Center, you'll see that. It's a full garden with a lot of plants. It's not just minimal plants on the site. And, when we're reducing ourselves and we're talking about climate change, and then we build houses
with yards that are, the houses are heat sinks themselves, but the yards become that too because it's just rock. And if you drive up there today and you see those poor little shrubs that are in the midst of that, and I asked the xeriscaper about it, can you ever use rock? And she said, well, what rock does is it evaporates all the water, so you might as well have the lawn. And in fact, I asked her about lawn and xeriscaping, and she said, lawn is not something that xeriscapers, I'm saying this wrong. Xeriscapers are happy with lawn as long as it's irrigated properly. Having a lawn, having an alternative lawn, they prefer an alternative lawn, but doing away with a lawn is not something that they want to see. What they want to see is larger trees and varying heights and some shade, because there's no shade, there's no anything on these properties. So I'm very unhappy with the landscaping plan. I certainly would not support it. The retaining walls, I agree with my other two councillors. It's going to take years to cover that with some green. And again, these massive retaining walls become heat sinks for the community. And we're, again, not doing our community any favors by continuing to do these kind of things. So I can't support either one of those things.
Okay.
I'd like, if there's another solution for the retaining wall, I'm sure there is. Councillor Reid brought up some solutions there, and I could certainly go there, but I certainly can't go with a landscaping plan unless a professional xeriscaping person's engaged for it.
Thank you. All right. I'll hear from the applicant.
Absolutely.
You can ask directly.
Feel free to just push through the PowerPoint.
You can ask.
Just moves to PowerPoints?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, can I just finish with one? I forgot.
Well, you can ask.
Okay, it was just the corrugated iron thing. I agree with Councillor Reid. I like it when it's used in mixed media, but when it's all on its own, looks like the shed on the back of the farm. But when it's used in mixed media, it's very effective.
So let me speak to that one first, because what we have done.
Oh, you have to say your name for the microphone, please.
My name is Sherwin Berlitz. I'm a partner in the development, and I've worked very closely with all the work that's being done there. So I'm very qualified to speak to the issues that have been brought up. I want to start with the corrugated metal. I've looked at that, and we have actually reduced the amount of corrugated that we're going to use, so that the face of the garage, where the garage doors are, will all be stucco. There'll be a section of corrugated that might be approximately 12 feet on the side of a garage that's 27 feet, so less than half. Then the rest of the garage around the side and back will be stucco. So it's mixed. Second thing about that is that if you were to look at the project from Santina, you might only see a little bit of the garage. You don't see very much. So the site. Let me go to the site plan, if I can find a site plan here. What am I got to do to push a button here to move? There. Okay, you can see Santina Road comes in from the right. All of the garages, all of the project is interior. So you from the street, what are you going to see? Right? The only people that are going to see what's in there are the people that live in there. Now, the reason where you want to use the corrugated is that it fits the theme of West Coast architectural design. The architects designed this before in 2015 when they did the development permit initially. And when Paul Walensky responded to that development permit application, he pointed out that the OCP, Official Community Plan, didn't prohibit or didn't allow the use of corrugated metal. We wanted to put them on all the garages in this duplex as well, but we didn't put it on there. But I had so many people say, we wish we could have the corrugated metal. I said, look, I'm going to ask at least to see if we can get it. It's not that we have to have it. I just think it looks better to have a little bit of mixture in there. And like I say, we've softened it considerably so that the percentage of metal on the building is less than I think it's probably 20% of the total circumference of the building. So it's a very small amount. And the product that we want to use is it's not a raw metal. It's been finished with a type of finish. I wish I could tell you the right words for it, but I don't know the right word. But I could have brought a sample tonight. I've got a nice piece of it. And it actually has a speckled whitish look to it. So it's not a highly reflective metal. It's softer. It has a softer look.
That dry coating?
It's like a baked on enamel type of finish on the corrugated metal. So it's going to be long maintenance or easy maintenance, long lasting, and it's going to have a soft look. And I mean, we could do the same thing putting up other types of stuff, but we want to use the corrugated metal because it fits in with the theme for the architecture that was designed to have West Coast contemporary. And so it's going to, like I said, the ratio is good for that. Let me speak to we have pictures here. How do help me move to the pictures of the retaining walls, and I have ivy pictures that we had submitted. So there's this section where the walls, in the middle, they're all 5 feet high. But when you get between the garages, they're 10 feet high. So there's not very much. But I'll tell you, in 1996, we built Acorn Plaza in West Bank beside McDonald's restaurant, Gallatley Road. And we had to build a retaining wall. That's it on the bottom. The pictures on the bottom have ivy that was planted in 1996. And within 2 years, the walls was covered with ivy. And we went back to take these pictures because I just remembered we'd done this a long time ago. That ivy's been growing there for like 25 years. And for the most part, you don't even realize there's a wall there. But that filled in in the first 2 years after we planted the ivy. Now, I don't know, I've never heard about this ivy being dangerous, or what do you say, obnoxious? Huh? Is there not an ivy that's not?
There's a list of alternatives to ivy per se that will give you the same level.
Yeah, so we can, knowing that, we will work to find, a product that's not going to be detrimental, But I like the feel of it. After it clicked that we could, we need the retaining wall because of the space density. In order to step ahead another 5 feet, in order to gain 5 feet, you lose a lot of ground that we don't have. We struggle to get as high a density of parking and keep the roads of proper width. When you start to come back another 5 feet, then somebody has to suffer. The road has to be less, or the parking space has to be less. And it's just very efficient when we're building. The benefit of adding the extra 2 garages means that we've got, it's not that it's free retaining wall, but the garage acts as a retaining wall. And there isn't, the walls are high enough that the backfill isn't going to allow things to come rolling over. I can tell you that. That's not going to be a problem. Where the people are complaining about isn't on this site. It's on there's one property on Santina where we've had a few rocks roll down. No, it's not off of a rock face. It was fill. But I was out there weeding, for example, and accidentally a rock got away on me. Not a big one. We're talking very small rock here. We're not talking big rocks that are getting away. But it does happen that one gets away. You'll be raking and a rock comes up and whoop, it gets away. But we're talking rocks that are less than 3 inches. We're not talking things that are causing damage. And it's not on this site that was happening.
I have Councillor Reid, Councillor Reid.
Sorry, thank you. I suppose I appreciate everything that you've given in terms of the corrugated metal. I'd just like to clarify 2 points. The 20% of the total area, when we're talking about a garage, it's got like 4 sides, and one of those is against the wall, and the other is a garage door. So that's 20%. Is it 20% of everything? Because it's still, that seems like
it's a garage door.
Is it the garage? Yeah. Is it one side, yeah. Or?
Well, if you looking at that picture there, you can see the face of the garage with where the garage doors are.
Right.
Okay. No corrugated metal on that elevation.
Okay.
None. On the side of each one, there might be, 10 or 12 feet.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
And that's only on a couple of the sides. Right. The back is already concrete. Now we have more garages. If I can, I got to learn how to navigate this thing. I want to go back to the site plan. So right there. Yeah. You can see squares where the garages are adjacent to the building. Mm-hmm. Those are freestanding garages that we will be finishing all 4 sides. It's not like one side is against the condo.
Right.
There's windows in the condo. There's a 12 or an 8-foot kind of a breezeway between the garage and the condo.
Okay.
And so the back side of that is all stucco. The side is stucco. There's stairs that go up to the top floor, but there's probably 10 to 12 feet that we wanted to do just metal.
Oh, okay.
On the left side and the right side.
Right.
Nothing on the garage door side, nothing on the back side.
So we're talking
corrugated
it's on all garages, whether they're on the parking
That's right.
spot or okay.
You can see there's 6 garages that are square.
Yep.
Relatively square. And in that, there's 2 sides of each garage for about 12 feet, 10 or 12 feet.
Okay.
That would have this corrugated, and it's not, I originally had visualized that we were going to use a metal that was corrugated metal that looks like what you see on the roof of sometimes garages or barns or right. This isn't that kind of a product. This is actually a little bit more expensive than we planned, but it looks so good. We want to use it because it gives a good look, it gives a good feel. It's a softer feel. It's not highly reflective.
And then my second point about the rocks falling down, I suppose, how do you feel about your liability as a developer, given that your rocks are going to be falling on parking areas, which are going to be occupied by, if they do fall, which admittedly you said on this house, they do fall occasionally and they're quite small, which is fine if they fall on a garden, but if they fall on a car.
Okay, so let me say this, that the top of the wall is always between 8 to 12 inches higher than the fill. Okay, so if something's coming down, there's a stop. Okay, plus we're planting that. That's all being hydroseeded, and then we have actual plants that we're putting in with the hydroseed. So it helps to retain the soil and hold things together. I haven't lost any sleep over the fact that anything's coming down that's going to hurt anybody. It's all going to be protected either by the garage or by a higher wall than what the backfill is going to be. So it's not that you fill the wall to the top and stuff is falling over it.
Okay, Councillor,
okay.
You done?
Yes, thank
Councillor
you.
Gamble had it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no problem with the corrugated metal. I think we've had that discussion for a while.
Thank you.
But and the retaining walls per se, I drove up there. I thought, I could envision kind of what you were proposing. But I do have a concern with the hillside above those, because it is it's not fill. It's glacial fill. You can see that.
Okay, so let me say that that we're building in front of the rock cut, like we had to blast in order to get down. But in front of that, we built a wall. Now, there's no rock faces that are 10 feet high that we're going to be backfilling right against.
No,
But-
it's you know, when you put your 10 feet up retaining wall, the higher portions, above that, there is a slope going up that is uncovered. And you said you're going to hydroseed, but I don't see that it's going to take much effect unless you put some topsoil. You know what I mean?
The
It's going
topsoil?
to need some actual work. And that's what I'm just saying that when I saw it and just hearing the discussion, I'm not the only one that had that concern.
I want to find the picture.
It made me think of behind Turtle Bay, the loose gravel, because it's quite good
Turtle
soft
Bay
gravel.
Crossing.
There was a picture that, there is
a picture of it here, yes.
Showing the
showing the site before construction.
Well, I
That's
was
the
up
picture,
there.
that's the bottom picture.
The bottom picture.
Okay, so what you see looks taller than it really is because we have already stacked the excess topsoil on top of a berm. So we've got probably 12 feet of top. We will lose over the hill to have topsoil to plant the hydroseed in.
So you'll put that back?
We put that back. Right now, it looks scary because it's at least 12, some of it, we took truckloads up there. We had a flat area that was probably 30 feet wide. We took truckloads up there and piled it up as high as we could get it because we had excess topsoil. When you do a development, you have to remove all the overburden. And we had piles of this stuff. Some of it we screened, so we have topsoil for landscaping. But stuff that was unscreened, we piled up there. And that stuff has a certain amount of rock in it because it's not been screened, right? But when you put it on the hillside, it all seeps in. And I actually like to have rocks, the bigger rocks, because we fit them into the hillside and they add extra dimension to the landscape. But it's deceptive because everything that looks like green on top is all weeds growing in the topsoil. So that doesn't stay. When we're all done, we'll have a garden spot up there plus extra topsoil for that plateau. And so it's not as high as it feels when you look at that hill.
Are you going to terrace that up there?
No, we'll just slope it. And like I say, let me point out here. You can see the edge of the dead rock right here. This is where we had the rock cut.
So where's the 10 foot? You're up there. Where's the 10 foot height?
This is a packer that's about, I don't think it's 10 feet high, but it might be 8 feet high.
About 8 feet.
It's probably 8 feet high. And so we'll have the wall, which is going to be 10 feet high, but it's in front of this. It comes in front of this rock, and then we backfill into that. So the slope isn't going to be as crazy as it looks right now, because we can be able to slope it down, and we'll leave at least 8 to 12 inches on top, so that if something rolls, it's not coming down.
Your worship, we need to have the applicant speak to the microphone because
Sorry about that.
otherwise people will not be able to hear.
Sorry, my
Thank you.
apology.
Thanks.
So I'm glad we have that picture because it does help to explain what's actually the reality there.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Councillor Scarrow. Oh, I'm sorry, you finished, Councillor Gamble?
Yes.
Okay.
Sherwin, I appreciate your time and effort that you're spending here. You've got me over the hump with your retaining wall.
Thank you.
I don't have concerns about it, but I did hear concerns raised by Councillor Ireland about xeriscaping, and I didn't hear you address them. His request was that you engage a professional, and I think that might be prudent.
Well, I feel a little bit insulted in the fact that we do have a professional landscaper. Swan Lake Landscaping has been doing all of Skooka's development. Skooka is my partner, and these guys do a good job. Now, there isn't a single customer that lives in our townhomes that have been landscaped that isn't 110% happy with what's done. They really are. And we don't have dead plants. I can't say we don't. We had a couple plants that I think were overwatered that in the home that I lived in, and we had to replace, I think it was 4 or 5 lavenders. The new ones are doing just fine, but we've got the water controlled a little bit better. But as far as them cooking out, the lavenders, in the most part, where you put in 1 or 2 lavenders, there's a large area now, huge, all lavender. It just took off and grew. So we don't have things that are burning up.
Well, you seen me up there today rooting around with my little car and my family and my little sailboard. I didn't stop to talk to you, but I did look at the different properties that had been xeriscaped, and I didn't notice the deficiencies, but I just wanted you to address them.
No, I appreciate you saying that. I could have asked all the people to come down here, because there isn't one of them that isn't happy with what they've got there.
Councillor Ireland, got a question?
Yeah, no, thank you. In response to that, I'm still hung up on the xeriscaping, because I talked to the xeriscaping people today. I know the former gardener who did all the xeriscaping for the whole xeriscape organization, and lots of landscape companies don't follow the procedures necessary for xeriscaping. I looked at the front of those. I thought, well, you know, some of those plants, they may still be alive, but they're on life support. You know, there's lots of landscaping companies out there. I go into subdivisions every day where landscapers have come in and done a job. They've thrown down their membrane, they plant a few plants, and they throw down the rock on top of it. And that's not landscaping. That's rockscaping, and that's not doing our environment any good. And I am not behind it one little bit. You know, if you've got somebody who's actually does xeriscaping as compared to landscaping, then I could be in. But I'm over the hump of the wall. I'm fine with the corrugated stuff and everything, but the xeriscaping for me isn't cutting it.
Thank you.
I want to speak to the lawns. I can tell you that I work in the. I have made all the sales of the products that we've built. And I can tell you that the people are very much not wanting lawns, very much not wanting lawns. They don't want a lawnmower. They don't want the expense of watering that lawn and then having to cut it every week. And in the condos, we were able to reduce our strata fees by, I'm sure, 25%, because we are xeriscaping and we don't have to cut lawns and maintain the lawns. The maintenance of the property is drastically reduced because of less water and no weekly cuts, no weekly cutting of the lawn. It's huge. So the customer today does not want the lawns in what we're doing. I didn't realize that when I started, but I realized that as we've been building it, because when people come here, they like that. They like the fact that the strata fees are lower, and they like the fact that it looks good to them.
Yeah, well, I'll just respond to that, because everybody likes it when their strata fees are lower, no matter what. Do people always do what's best for the planet and best for the community? And I'm not talking about the people who are buying from you today, but you're talking about the people who might buy that house the next time, and then the next time, and then the next time. And, you know, like if I was looking, I certainly wouldn't be interested. I'm not interested in a rockscaped house. And, you know, if that's what you feel you have to do, I just don't support it.
Okay. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as far as the wall goes, so where that packer is, that's where the wall is going to go. Because I was at, you know, when I was up there today and I got pictures of the neighbor's place, that's full on rock. There's nothing there. So I can see if that's where you're putting it, well, I'm a little better with it. But the problem I have would be the fact that when you put in this much concrete and everything else here, Councillor Reid sort of touched on this, we all of a sudden now have had some issues with drainage, and if that's all rock, we need to, I think we need to revisit that, what is it called, the hazard, hazard guidelines, DP guidelines, Jamie might be able to tell you, and it's not triggered with us approving this. It was only triggered before when it met what the standards are. So if we do this, I would kind of like to make sure that we're not creating a problem here and it sneaks under the radar because we didn't check it. We've been burned a couple times and had some water issues, quite well exposed in a couple areas, and you know, I don't want to see another issue, you know, purely where it was something that we didn't double check. So I'm not sure if we can do a double check on this one by doing a big wall, but that would be the only way that I would put my hand up to approve that kind of retaining wall myself.
So let me speak to that. Around every building that we build, including every garage that we build here, we have 5-inch big O picking up the drains off the roof and pulling off the water that comes down against the foundation. Okay, all of these garages that are going to be built against that wall will have perforated pipe picking up the drainage that comes from off the roof or off the ground. That water comes down the hill, whatever. It finds its way into the big O, and that's connected to storm drain, which is in the city, which is the city storm drain. If I showed you the master plan of the storm drainage for that site, I can show you that there's pipes that are 2-foot diameter around the front of the bigger build, in the front of that condo, that pick up all the storm drainage that comes off the condo. Now, why would it be 2 feet? Because I asked that because it doesn't look like you need 2 feet to carry away the storm drain. But what they're doing is they're using the pipe as storage capacity. It's like a tank. It's like a 2-foot pipe can hold a huge volume of water. So if there's a big storm and it can't get away down the street doesn't have 2-foot storm drains. I can tell you that. They might be 10-inch, but the 2 feet is to hold the extra capacity of whatever storm cloudburst might dump in it. So I'm saying the whole system, the whole storm drainage for the system has been engineered.
So I'm not sure if you know how a potato gun works, but if you take 2 feet and put it down to 10 inches, you end up with a lot of pressure, or you end up with something plugged. And that would be where I would have my issue, is exactly what you just said. You got a whole pile of storage trying to fit into a smaller amount, and that's where you're going to get your issues. Like I said, we have already had a couple issues, and I don't want to go there again. So I will be comfortable if we take that exactly what we're supposed to do on a normal one before this gets approved with any variance. So I'm not comfortable unless we get that done. That's just my personal, but I'm going to go with what it should be right from the start.
So I can only tell you that we've had professional engineers that have designed the system for the storm drainage, and they're bonded and they guarantee their work. So I could say that it's covered. We're not cutting corners.
Like I say,
I looked at it and I thought it was overkill.
We're the ones that have to live with it if it fails. We're the ones that get the finger pointed at us, and that's why I say I'm not comfortable. So, like I say, my fellow councillors can go whatever way they want, but I would like to have that thing revisited. So,
well, I need it approved tonight if there's any way to do it.
I guess I'm not understanding the 2-foot pipe. That seems higher than what our storm drain.
Well, I know I said the same thing when I saw that much pipe on the site, because it goes the total length of the front of the building. And I said, why do we have this huge pipe here? It's for the capacity so that it doesn't matter how much it rains. The pipe will probably never get filled, but it provides, it's just like when you have a rock pit, you can put a lot of water into it for a long time until it gets filled. And that's what this is. It's like a rock pit, and you got a big fat pipe that can handle a lot of volume before you have a problem.
Jamie might have, Director of Planning.
Thank you, Your Worship. And our Director of Engineering may have some context to add in this regard. With respect to the application before you this evening, it's important that we only consider the DP guidelines as well as the variance before council. So with respect to the DP guidelines, the assessment is that the majority of the DP guidelines have been met. However, council does have that at their discretion and can consider those. And also the variance. With respect to the servicing matters, those can certainly be addressed further at the site servicing stage, building permit, and of course, everything does have to be engineered and addressed and in line with council's bylaws, as well as best engineering practices. So did just want to add some context in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
You had a question, Councillor?
Your worship, before any motion, we still need to entertain the public.
I have to hear from the gallery. Thank you very much. Sure. Anybody else wish to address council with regard to this variance? Second time of asking? Third time of asking? Hearing none, then Councillor Scarrow.
Well, I'd like to move option A, but I'd like to add an amendment to it that would include either the developer or the developer's landscaping agent to employ a professional xeriscaper or a consultant in the process of developing the landscaping plan for the unbuilt buildings.
A seconder? Councillor Ireland? Approved with the condition?
Can I add a friendly amendment? Could we say for the landscaping plan for the unbuilt buildings and the retaining wall, so that we don't end up with an invasive species?
I would accept that.
Thank you.
You understand it? All right. Those in
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the option presented by council is option A. Would council like me to read the entire motion out? With the amendment that the applicant hire a developer or landscaper to employ a professional or consultant for a landscaping plan for the unbuilt buildings and the retaining wall.
xeriscaping.
Xeriscaping.
Okay. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor McKenzie opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. All right.
And Your Worship, if you may, we'll just take 2 minutes. We're just going to sanitize as members of the public use the podium, just as part of our COVID
2-minute break.
Oh, great. Should it be 5? Kara's got a pee.
Councillor Scarrow.
Councillor Scarrow. Sort of like did my neighbor ask me to get a special.
No, I haven't called it back, so I thought, well,
Because I clearly said to school, if it was an issue, I don't.
Yeah, and I said to Scott, if it's not impeding public safety, not an issue.
For me backing up, I will for the issue.
And then him driving out. No, but I thought, before I talked to him, I wanted to see if you guys were getting along, or if we were getting into a civil dispute.
Well, we are. I don't know why.
But
he hates all my trees. He hates all.
I had
I catch him.
Are we good to go? All right. Okay, good to go? All right.
Yes. All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Michael Charney. I'm here as a plan technician to present a development variance application to you. So I'm presenting DVP 2020-003. The civic address is 1809 Lakestone Drive. The OCP designation is rural residential, and the zoning is rural residential 3. And the proposal is for a variance to dock shape. So the location of the property is just north of Lakestone Developments on Okanagan Lake. Here's an aerial of the property, as well as a site photo showing the rear yard and foreshore adjacent to the property. And then noting the dock seen in the picture is the neighboring dock. So the variance requested, as mentioned, is a variance to dock shape. The variance is from an L or T dock shape structure to a U dock shape. The rest of the language after structures is just reflecting the rest of the clause. Nothing else is changing other than the shape. Here is a site plan showing or illustrating the area variance. As you can see, the U-shaped proposal for the dock. And then a side profile of the dock as well. So a bit of background, an application was made for mortgage in February of this year, which did not meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw, hence resulting in this variance application. The applicant has completed and provided a review of the proposal by a qualified environmental professional, or a QEP. The recommendations of this assessment have been incorporated into the design of the dock. The owner has applied to the province for a Water Sustainability Act Section 11 application for approval for changes in and around a stream for consideration under the general permission requirements regarding private mortgage as set out by Ministry. Excuse the small text on the right. It's something that you can see and review in the council report provided. Just to summarize quickly, the QEP ranked the risk of this dock as moderate. That's not necessarily saying that in comparison to other docks it has a high or low risk ranking. It's just that all docks in foreshore are ranked as moderate. Furthermore, shore spawning kokanee, freshwater mussels, and foreshore plants are in the no color zone. There are several color zones ranging from black, red, yellow, and no color. Black being with the highest sensitivity and highest risk, with no color being the lowest. Staff is in support of the variance for the following reasons. The U-shaped configuration does not have a significantly larger impact than what is currently allowed by the zoning bylaw. The applicant has completed and provided a review of the proposal by a QEP. The dock will only be constructed if it meets the general permissions of private mortgage as set out by the province. So option A is that DVP 2020-003 allowing for the variance of a U-shaped dock be approved. And option B is that the application be denied. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Arnold?
I'll make a motion.
I have to hear from the gallery first. It's a variance, so, thank you, Michael, that's it.
There is no gallery.
I'll still ask, anybody wish to, might be online, you see.
That's right.
Address council with regard to this? Second time of
My
asking?
kids might be watching us.
Third time of asking? Hearing none, no phone calls? Cara, I'll take a motion, Councillor Ireland.
I'll motion staff option A.
Okay, Councillor McKenzie, second. Discussion? Cara?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe this is some questions that the planner could help with. So bear with me here. Okay, so first thing is that the environmental report mentions that the access way is in the no colour zone, but the dock platform is firmly within the kokanee yellow zone. So I'm not sure what that slide said when it said none of it is in the no colour zone, or whether I'm misunderstanding the slide. But on page 2, 3 and 4 of the QP's report, it says that the dock is in the yellow zone, the dock platform is in the yellow zone, and therefore is not compliant with the dock design criteria for Okanagan Large Lakes that was put out by FLINRO, which requires the platform to be 24 meters square or smaller. If it's larger than that, they can consider it, provided the report has been done by a QP, which in this case it has. So given that the QP's report says at the beginning it's in the yellow zone for the dock platform, which is the largest part of it, then there is a section on page 8 that goes 8.1, are site-specific mitigation measures required? If so, then list these measures. And they answer no, but they refer to only the dock platform, only the dock passageway being in the no colour zone. It does not mention any mitigation for the fact that the dock platform is in the yellow zone. So my question would be, are more piles needed for a U-shaped dock than for an L or a T-shaped dock? Because there is going to be more disturbance in the yellow zone with a U rather than a T or an L. My thought is logically yes, but I wanted to check.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. To be honest, I don't have a great answer for you. My assumption is that the piles are relevant to the shape of the dock, but also the length of the dock. Just to explain and give example, this dock is 32 meters long versus we allow for 40 meters long, and then the province allows for 42 meters long.
Yep.
So according to that, and based on what the applicant has provided, if they were to propose a longer dock, it could have more piles. Obviously, I can't say for certain.
I'm sorry, it's not the dock length, it's the amount of piles needed for a U shape. So the fact is that a U shape, you would require 2, 4, 6, I don't know how many piles, but more I would suggest than a T shape. And my concern is that the QP's report ignores, mentions, and then doesn't mention the fact that it's in a yellow zone for the significant portion. The most parts of piles in the dock are going to be in a yellow zone. And my other question is, as a follow-up one, is that end, the platform where it joins the high water mark, there is a retaining wall on the property. So is the proposal for the platform to join all the way straight through to the retaining wall, or does it drop down on the high water mark, leave an open space, and then go up to the retaining wall?
Sure. Just to back up to the first question, in terms of piles, I think it's fair to assume that a U-shaped dock might require more piles than an L or T-shaped dock. Staff has deemed that difference to be not significant enough for us to not support this application. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I wondered if that was because staff the statement earlier in the slide says that it's in a no color zone, so that's when it's not in a no color zone. If it was in a no, if it wasn't a yellow zone, would staff have a different opinion? I suppose is what my question.
Some of it could be floating.
You'd never build a float. You'd never build a float down there. It would be gone. Oh, yeah.
I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I just wanted to.
Oh, you're going to respond? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm trying to assist Michael from the sidelines, if you would. Having considered the comments you had regarding earlier in the QEP report, if you continue on, I believe you'll find on page 8 of 19 of the QEP's report that they have addressed each of the things that you brought up in terms of the positioning such that the access avoids the kokanee spawning habitat. So that there's a full explanation in the 3 points, I think it's 1.7, 1.8, 1.9 of that particular table. So I would just recommend you have a look at that.
I agree the access walkway avoids the kokanee spawning zone, but it doesn't mention the platform in any one of those points. It doesn't respond. It doesn't state that the platform is in the yellow zone and how that is going to be mitigated. It just says the access way is in the no color, which I completely agree. The earlier report says it's in the no color zone, but the specific area of concern is the yellow zone, and the QP report doesn't seem to address or make a statement on that in terms of, it says the access walkway avoids the yellow zone, which it does, but the platform doesn't. It sits right in the middle of it, and it's bigger than what Finro asked for, and it has presumably more piles than a T-shape or an L-shape.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, not to question, but I just again direct you to 1.8 that says the proposed structure has been positioned, so it's the access walkway, and the next sentence is, although the platform is greater than 24 square meters, the proposed platform does meet the minimum 0.8 meter depth requirement outlined in the dock design criteria for Okanagan large lakes. Therefore, further site-specific mitigation measures should not be required.
But to me,
we interpret that as satisfying the provincial legislation.
Even though it doesn't say that it's addressing the fact that it's in a yellow zone.
I think that's what the 0.8 meters is referencing, is the design criteria for that zone is that depth.
Exactly.
Certainly we can, seek more clarification if you like, but I believe that was the intent there.
So do you think it has more piles going in as a U shape, given one is about area and this is about the U shape? So would it have more piles disturbing that yellow zone as a U shape than it would as an M or a T?
That doesn't seem to be an issue considering the comments made by the QEP, but they are the qualified professionals, and I certainly wouldn't second guess them.
Councillor Ireland has a question. Run away, don't run, you might need the answer to help Michael.
If you look at the dock design, it's likely that there would only be 2 more piles. There's not going to be, if you alter the shape of it, you might have 2 more piles, but because you see the span has no piles. The span is just spanning, the bottom of the U.
Gotcha.
Has no pilings in it. So the second point is that this is provincial territory. We're only talking about shape.
Right.
And if it was an issue, the province would say, you can't build it there. Because right now, we're installing our own community dock in Okanagan Center. And we've had to move it 17 feet exactly from where we want it to be because it's a kokanee red zone. And they will not allow us to build it 1 more inch into that zone. That's the province and that's us. So the province will say they don't want it there completely.
Okay.
It's kind of above us. But that being said, the kokanee yellow, black, and red zone, all that stuff is completely junk science. It's 40 years old and it has got a whit of truth in it and needs to be completely updated by fisheries people, but they just hang on to it and keep on throwing that out there.
It should be updated every different kokanee cycle because the spawning ground
There is
shift
no
is
constant
every
spawning
cycle.
ground of the kokanee, and anybody who knows anything about fish knows that. but they refused to update that science. But anyways, it's their purview on that, and a yellow zone is the weakest of the zones, so they would have allowed this dog.
Thank you. Did you have a question? No? Okay. Thank you very much. I have a motion. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. None opposed. Thank you. All right, next one up. Corporate plan.
Okay, Your Worship, members of council, it's my pleasure to introduce and present to you the 2020 corporate business plan. I will not use the presentation because I think I can do this without going through slides. But just to give, I mean, for the benefit of the public, this is I think it's a milestone in the approach that we have within our organization with respect to business to help the decision-making process of council. Now, the idea of reviewing the corporate business plan was approved by council when the new vision, values and mission statements were approved by council a few months ago. And just to give a little bit of background there, the reason why we're doing this is because the corporate plan that we have currently is 10 years old. And you know, many things have changed. We never had an opportunity to review it because of other pressing planning matters that we needed to address, like you know, we had the water master plan, we had a couple of OCP reviews, we had an ICSP being approved. So we've been slowly grinding through all this, and finally, with the new council decided at the strategy session, just right after the election, to address the council vision, and that's where we're at tonight. The council vision was approved, and now subsequently we need to approve a new corporate business plan. The approach that we've employed since 2010, basically, with respect to our decision-making process, is a strategic approach. So that's why the corporate business plan is important, because it highlights some of the components that we need in order to provide the foundation for that strategic approach. Having said that, there are some components of the business plan that, in my mind, are important to highlight. Obviously, the first one is the council vision. That was approved by council in January, I believe, of this year. And what is important to highlight is the fact that there's a shift in the way the council vision and the mission statement, which operationalizes the vision of council, have been approved. We came about to those by considering the old one being too long, too encompassing, probably not as modern as it should be. And because we have had a number of planning documents that have been approved in the last 10 years, this new approach is much more feasible for the community of the 21st century. And so that's what we're trying to do. We also put the organizational chart in there because obviously that represents the current capacity that we have at the organizational level. And now because of the corporate business plan and all the other priorities that we have, that organizational chart may vary as we grow in size and in scope. One thing that we really wanted to put into the plan was the service delivery model, which shows the strategic approach that we've had for the last 10, 11 years. And obviously the product of that model, which is the strategic priorities that we approve every time we have a new council. And finally, I think it's important to give enough financial information in the plan that is not the actual budget, obviously, because that has a process to go through, but to give like a snapshot of the financial position of the district. Now, One of the things that I like to outline is the fact that the council vision, the mission statement, the values, and the 5 pillars of a sustainable lake country are part of this document, and they need to become, in my mind, the guiding light, I guess, of the council and of all the plans that we have. And that's one of the reasons why we're asking council to approve the corporate business plan, because we can actually use formally that vision and the values and mission statement, and also to create through the corporate plan what I would say it's an overall alignment and a holistic approach to our decision-making process, which will be represented through all the other documents that we're going to approve in the future, including even, the business of, not only approving an OCP or a plan, but also the various applications that we bring before council. I think there is an important part of that, which will be represented actually when we in the reports that we're going to come after this plan is approved. Following approval, we plan to post the corporate plan for all the public to view. The vision will be distributed to staff so that they can familiarize with it and understand it and work with it. It will be part of the budget process in the sense that will become a document that will be distributed during budget deliberations to keep in mind what we are trying to accomplish. And finally, we believe that because it's a corporate plan, it needs to be dynamic, and we need to review it on a regular basis. We're not going to be static for another 10 years before we get to the point that changes will be made, especially when we consider that most of the times when we adjourn, not adjourn, but when we refresh and update the strategic priorities, then obviously those need to be updated within the plan as well, because they're part of the plan. I think our preferred option, that is the plan be approved. There are a couple of other options there in alternative. One is to refer back to staff for further amendments if you have any, or you may wish not to approve it, which means that we'll continue to have the current plan for another few years.
Councillor Scarr.
Thank you, Alberto, and I'm excited about the strength that this gives, like this policy statement, this corporate business plan gives our staff the strength and the power to do the correct things, and following the mission statements that we have created and preserved in here. So I, with happiness, would definitely recommend option A, the preferred option.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Gamble.
Yes, I'll second that, and I do have a couple of questions.
That's great.
And I'm just looking at the budget, and I see that for 21, 22, 23, and 24, the surplus is significantly lower, and I'm wondering if this is representative of unknowns as far as grants, or is it also in response to the potential impact of COVID?
No, those are the numbers that are taken from the 5-year financial plan that you have approved.
Yes, so that's all.
That's all. So we're taking that information and we're putting it into the budget in a very succinct format, just for the people to understand what the numbers are.
And it's not overstating, it's...
No, it's just merely factual information that we're providing there.
Okay, good. And the other question was regarding total outstanding debt. I was pleased to see kind of a very precise and shortened version.
Yep.
I think that's great. And then the current borrowing capacity limit, liability servicing limit, 6,300,000 in debt payments, so it's way below our capacity.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, so just to make clear what that is.
And those numbers were taken from the approved audited financial statements of 2019.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alberto.
No problem.
I think this is a very easy to read document that sets everything out very, very clearly. Just a couple of comments. What I suppose there's a lot in here, but what I was missing was the relationship of this document to the OCP. So, how from the OCP follows strategy, follows policy, follows bylaws, kind of. And I just wondered if there was an opportunity, given we've got, this is how the district works, this is how council works, really the OCP is the community's document, so to put how the OCP interfaces with this document.
We could certainly try to find a spot that, the OCP is a planning document with respect to land use. It's not really a planning document with respect to the business. But for instance, you know, the strategic priorities include in all the departments the elements that we need to approve, I guess, to get to those communities' objectives and goals. The service delivery model section there that you see includes the connection to the other major planning components that we have. And so that service delivery model section represents that bridging between this corporate plan and all the other planning documents that we have, including the OCP. I believe I mentioned the ICSP, I may have not, but and also, you know, the water master plan and mobility for tomorrow and so on. I mean,
but they're not related to the OCP, and the things that staff are working on and council is taking are ways to deliver the OCP, the vision of the OCP, the statements within the OCP to the community. So I just think it just needs to me, it just needs to be, where are all these ideas coming from? Well, they stem from help delivering that official community plan.
Yep.
So I just wanted to see whether we could bring that in somehow. And my other comment was, the last page, 2 pages, there's a current debt repayment load per capita, and then the first number is 94, and then the last number is 502, and I just didn't understand where the $94 per person came from.
So I have to ask Tanya to provide us with an answer there.
Yep, absolutely. So the $94 is the annual repayment per capita, right, and then the 502 is the actual amount of debt per capita.
Okay, okie dokie. Could it just say, like it says debt per capita is a 502, could it say annual repayment is per capita is 94, just to clarify that first number?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. And then the last one was just, Tanya's, I got you. Payroll as a percentage of budget. I'm assuming that's a percentage of the operational budget rather than the overall budget, including capital.
That's correct.
Correct, yes.
Could it again just have percentage of operational budget? Just if somebody looks at the overall budget in the business plan, it's like 32 million, and then they go, well, that's not 33%, but it's a subset of that.
Fair comment. Yeah.
Thank you. That was it.
You're surmising that people are going to actually read this?
I told you it's a very readable document.
We certainly hope so.
It's a very good document, and it will be on the web. Anyway.
Correct.
Oh, and sorry, a final question. Will it get updated annually? Because obviously our strategic priorities change. So will we have a 21 to 2025 one?
Again, yes, that's the intent, and the reason is because we do have a change in date every time we have a new 5-year financial plan. So we're going to do the same with the corporate plan, because hopefully we're going to associate the two together.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. We have a motion. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's up now?
No presentation on the next one, just here to answer questions if council has any.
I got a question.
Yes, Councillor Scarrow.
Tanya, Councillor Ireland and I want to know why Todd's paid $10 more than us a year. And we want our $3.
That I am not entirely sure. I'll have to look at that.
Okay, well, we expect a check in the mail.
Travel expenses. Anybody gets travel expenses, it's her. Move the recommendation.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Did I have to leave the room for that? Did you read it?
Who's doing the Highway 97?
That would be me, Your Worship.
Oh.
That would be Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. Joining us online.
Yeah, so good evening again, Mayor and Council. So we have here a report on the resumption of portions of Highway 97. Excuse me. So the report that you have included in part of your agenda package is one that I prepared on behalf of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, who are requesting council support to change the designation of 10 parcels of Highway 97 that are currently registered as roads, and they are proposing they're changed to arterial highway, which essentially will transfer the jurisdiction to the province. And this request has come about as some of the sections of the new alignment of Highway 97 were caught by a legislative change in 2010 that changed the way highways were classified. So basically an amendment to the Transportation Act was adopted in 2010, which required all plans showing land intended to become arterial highway to be identified as arterial highway on the plan. And the community charter also specifies that the title to all highways within a municipality not designated as arterial highway is by default vested in the municipality. So if it's not registered as a arterial highway, it then de facto becomes the responsibility of the municipality. So there are currently 10 parcels of Highway 97 shown as road that were registered prior to this legislative change in 2010, and they are now currently vested in the municipality. So the remaining plans registered after 2010 identify the parcels as arterial highways, and those titles are vested in the province.
Good, thank you. Councillor McKenzie had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Matthew. On the very first picture, it actually shows right beside Pretty Road and Highway 97. It actually shows the building is marked as arterial highway. I'm just curious, what can you explain that?
So
arterial highway.
Yeah, let me just bring that one up if I can. I mean, I guess essentially the parcel itself is being dedicated as arterial highway, but it doesn't change the classification of buildings and frontage roads and service roads that are actually within that parcel, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it's just that little sliver of land then is all it is.
Yes.
Okay. And then the only other one I have is the third picture. That's a big chunk. It shows arterial highway where there's a bunch of trees. And I'm just curious, that looks like a big section of trees.
Yeah, so I think again, it's obviously the highway's already been built, and it was built through what were the parcels of land of the day, and all we're doing here is changing the classification from road to arterial highway. There's as far as I'm aware, the purpose of this is just the transfer of that responsibility from municipality to province. and doesn't affect, or this isn't a plan to do any works or make any alterations or construct any more elements to the highway.
Okay, so officially, who owns that property then? Is that Crown land or is that district land that we're transferring?
That's a very good question, and I don't know the answer to that one right now. I know that we do have, I do believe, the consultant that's working on behalf of the MOT-TI that's facilitating this transition may be on the line, that we may be able to pose that question to.
Okay, because I'd just be curious, because that's a big chunk of land on that one, and that would be plenty big enough for a park or something. So I would have problems with that one if that's us giving that land back.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like the consultant's actually on the line to be able to answer that question. So I do know that Matt Vader's on the line, and maybe with his experience in dealing with these matters, he may be able to offer an explanation on this if he's available.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Salmon. In terms of the highway, they never really were ours to begin with. It's, as Matthew said, the change in 2010 in terms of classification. So it's just identifying as arterial, so it's not really giving back. Also, the corridor, as we know, with right-of-ways are not just the road. There is drainage components that the ministry is responsible for on the highway that accounts for a lot of that land. It's not just the highway itself.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure we weren't giving away something.
Making sure we don't have to pay for something. Councillor Scarrow.
Yeah, we're giving away responsibility and liability. That's all we're doing. No, Matthew, I appreciate the report. And my only question is, because of this change in 2010, we have to make this adjustment, if you like, to the classification of the land and the ownership. Is there anything coming the other way from the Pelham Wash similar that we're going to have to deal with in the future, or is the Pelham Wash already ours and secured?
Again, that's obviously a separate matter, although somewhat interrelated, and I know Mr. Vader's also spearheading that one, so I would defer to him again to provide an answer on that particular matter.
Thank you, Councillor Scarrow. As Matthew said, they're completely separate components. It will be devolved. It's a little bit different because of Indigenous interests in areas and land claims that we're working with the province and our partners to address. So it's kind of a different situation than arterial and classification of road. It's more of a acknowledgement that the Crown has a duty to consult, and the authority lies with the province and Okanagan Indian Band to deal with that. And we're sort of the recipients of the outcome that we're still dealing with.
Okay. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And on the subject of Pelham Wash, on slide 9, there is a section to the north and south of Evans Road that is part of the designation to the province, but it still appears to be on Pelham Wash. And I just wondered, is there any implications regarding snow clearance or tending of the verges, because Evans Road is now boxed in by arterial highways. So does that have any implications to them?
No, I mean, Evans Road is a municipal responsibility and will remain a municipal responsibility.
So the snowplow will go all the way up the arterial highway and then do a right onto Evans Road. There's not a problem with that.
No.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Staff recommendation or preferred option? Councillor Ireland, Councillor McKenzie, those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Annual tax sale deferral. We're going to hear. There you are.
The next two reports are for adoption, and if council has any questions.
Councillor, you move it, Councillor Campbell, seconded, Councillor Ireland. Questions? Those in favor? Opposed? Motion. You got a question? Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tanya, so just to clarify, on the property that came up earlier in the meeting, that 11151, can you maybe just clarify exactly what's going on with that one, just so that everybody's on the same page?
Nope. Because it's legal, I can't say much of anything at all. All I can say is that that house sold at tax sale in 2019. The district was the purchaser by default because nobody showed up to bid on any properties. So we are the purchaser at tax sale. Under legislation, we're permitted to extend that redemption date based on that. But beyond that, I can't comment on anything else until legal has been through it.
Okay, well, I didn't expect that. I just thought, when do we have any idea? Because I'm getting phone calls on that one as well with dealing with bylaw, and I'm just curious, you know, are we able to tell them it's in the works? It'll be a year, it'll be a month, right? We don't know, right? So I'm just curious what we should be replying.
We don't know. That, I mean, I don't have any, I can't even provide you with a estimate of time on when we or somebody else may clean it up. I don't know any of that stuff, and council at some point will have to make some decisions around it likely, which will come back at an in-camera. So all I can say right now is that we're working on it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Do I have a Councillor Reid?
Just a question further to Councillor Mackenzie's question. Can we change the extension period? Does it have to be 1 year, or can we do 6 months, or?
No, I think it's provincial, but.
I think that the legislation, and just give me 1 second to look at the piece of legislation, but I think the legislation says that we are permitted to extend it, and it's not up to 1 year, it's 1 year.
Okay.
But let me just grab that legislation. It's already been provided 3 readings, so if council wanted to change that, we'd have to take it back, rescind those readings, I think. Raina may be able to comment more, but I think we'd have to rescind those readings.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carroll, any question?
Hey, Tanya, do we have to grant the year?
No.
We can say
it's
no?
completely optional.
Okay,
however.
Well, I'll let you do the however after I'm finished my little bit here. Because we are having so many problems on that property. And problems that if we extend this for 1 year, we're going to be 1 year away from even beginning to deal with some of those land use problems.
No, no, this is future tax sales.
So this does not relate to 11151 Deldar Road?
We should be on, I think that the one that was adopted was the annual tax sale deferral, and we are on the tax sale redemption extension bylaw, which does impact 11151 Deldor. So here's what I can say about it. There's legal associated with this, that if council chose, I would defer this to the next meeting and not adopt tonight and defer the readings to the next meeting, because there is some information that should be provided to council, but it's legal and it needs to go in an in-camera. Council is not required to provide a year of extension. However, it's highly recommended that we do, and I don't want to share all the information at this point in an open meeting, but it's highly recommended that we do the extension on it. But if council would like to wait, we do not need to adopt this tonight. It can be adopted at a future meeting.
Motion to defer, sir.
Seconder? Moved and seconded. Discussion? Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Good.
All right. Then, we're down to councillor items,
No,
aren't we?
this one pertains to 115. Are we deferring that one too?
No, that's the one we did first.
That was the one, okay.
The other one was
Sorry.
passed.
We already adopted the first one.
We passed the deferral and we deferred the
Yeah.
extension.
Councillor Kozo, what's exciting in your part of the community?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we've had a quiet summer for forest fires. It's kind of lighting up a little bit now. I think there's 95 across the province right now as we speak. So just keep being fire smart. We're spending our weekends up at D Lake now due to COVID. We have our own camp spot there, so that's where we retire to. And so I get to talk with Bruce Williams, the owner, on a weekend basis. So it's great fun, but just be fire smart.
Good, thank you. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As far as the fires go, I was sent a text earlier tonight saying there was a fresh fire right above Penticton started today. So hopefully that's as far as it goes and they get on it quick. As far as in my neck of the woods there, it has been an extremely busy summer, very busy. When I went down to Mr. Ireland's area as well, I see people parking all over the roads, and obviously our area is no longer a hidden gem. It's a lot of people discovered it, and not most of it's good, but I sure see a lot of garbage and stuff left around and a lot of recycle stuff. So in our new little plan, it would be really nice to be able to take care of that stuff, because I see a lot of people don't respect our beaches like they should. So I'm hoping that we can somehow do an educational program rather than tasers to force people to make a simple walk to the garbage can. So other than that, I would say all good.
Thank you. Councillor Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would echo Councillor McKenzie's comments. You know, lots of times we go down to the beach, we have to go and clean it first. We don't have to, but that's what we choose to do. That's why he gets the extra $10. Well, I should be getting the $10 too then. I should be getting 15. But anyways, yeah, it'd be great if people took a little bit more care with the waterfront, and I think we're going to have to look at some sort of recycling in our community parks like Okanagan Center. The garbage is, people decide to leave enough garbage to fill 3 cans on a daily basis. It's I don't know where it all comes from and what it all does, but on the exciting side of things, our new dock got all the pilings put in today, and it's just waiting now for its new covering. So and it's going to be one that goes out deep enough to jump off of, and be a great place to fish and all sorts of fun for kids and everybody. It's just outside the red zone.
Which side do you got?
And in all the years I've lived there, there's never been a kokanee on that shore ever. And in fact, talking to local neighborhood people, no one has ever seen kokanee shore spawn between Surwa's Orchard and my end ever in history. So I don't know what the provincial government thinks they're doing, but they certainly don't know what they're doing. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Scarrow.
And I'll be real quick about this, Councillor Gamble. August 24th is when it becomes mandatory to wear a mask on a public transit in the city of Kelowna, District of Lake Country. I'm okay with that ruling, but I'm worried about compliance because right now we have on every bus a sign that strongly suggests you wear a mask, and I would say less than 10% of the people do. And I even noticed probably more than half of the drivers don't wear masks. So the 24th is we're going to see what happens on the 24th. But on the 24th, it does become mandatory, and I am given the power as a driver to refuse service to anyone who does not come on a bus with a mask.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one, do I notice a motion? No, I do a motion to, we had a councillor item to write to the federal government regarding in support of the National Farmer Care Programme, and also to UBCM. And since writing that motion, we've been advised that it is not within UBCM's remit. So in a bit of housekeeping, I need to propose a motion to remove the requirement to write to UBCM about the National Farmer Care Plan. We have already written to the federal government. So that is what I'm putting on the floor. And I need a seconder.
Yeah.
Can I do that for now? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's just a housekeeping item, as Councillor Reid said, to amend the existing resolution number 04071 to remove the bottom part of the resolution that says that be submitted as a UBCM resolution. It says outside their purview. We absolutely can do that tonight with the mover and seconder.
Okay. Councillor Gamble seconded already. It's moved and seconded.
Yeah, thirded. Yeah.
Those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Got that off the list. And my second two councillor items.
Yeah, you do. Bill.
Was a thank you to staff from the community of Cars Landing for the incredible speed at which the broken swim ladders were replaced at Gable Beach and Coral Beach in under 48 hours. They had been identified and were fixed. I think one was 1.5 days. So everybody's very grateful for that. And on the subject of Fire Smart, please, can we not have fireworks at midnight? Huge display went off in Cars Landing. We are at a very extreme heat level and the landscape is tinder dry. So please, can we not have fireworks that are going to potentially set the community on fire? So it was just a little surprise for everybody when they heard it. I'm sure they were beautiful, but probably not the time to do it.
I'm not sure that's not. We don't have a fire works bylaws for, but with our open fire bylaw, do we have? Maybe Rena can. People shouldn't be doing it, but I don't know.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, fireworks are prohibited under our fire bylaw unless you have a special permit from the fire chief, which I don't believe we would be issuing any special permits at this time. So they are prohibited.
Good, thank you. They're prohibited. Unless you have a permit. Yeah.
You have to have a permit.
Yeah. Yeah, what do they call them? A pyrotechnic.
Pyrotechnic level 1.
Right. Councillor Gamble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would just like to say that I have been to the beaches a number of times. No, maybe Mr. Ireland, Councillor Ireland, or somebody else has cleaned it up. I don't know, but I have found the beaches to be clean. And I love that there are garbage containers in the beaches that I've attended. And I just think that we're very fortunate to have those things in place. So somebody's been cleaning them because where I was, there wasn't anything on the beach. And I have to say, I think we are very, very lucky to have such great beaches here. And the lakes are even better. We're really fortunate. One of the things that I did want to bring up was that I heard recently that School District 23 property, where the new field is going in, there were a number of people, unruly, undressed, and whether they were high or inebriated, I don't know, causing a disturbance. And the police were called. And it seems that we are having trouble, well, this is the word I got, dealing with these situations and moving these people out of the area. And I don't know, but I'm bringing it forward because it is a concern to me. We need to be able to feel safe in our community, and we need to address these issues. And I would like to know what the police are doing to address this situation, so that I don't want to be hearing that they can't do anything, because that really isn't acceptable. I don't know how we deal with them, but we've got to find ways. So I just wanted to bring that up. It's just something, I don't know if it's very common, but, you know, I think we had a couple of people here tonight speaking about problems as well, and better to deal with them early before they get to be big.
Very good. We have a new command at our detachment, and should be made aware that we would like to see RCMP attending at times when our citizens ask to be there. So we'll keep emphasizing that. Talking of beaches, I had some people complaining that apparently people aren't adhering to the no smoking signs in public places. I know that was an issue earlier in the year, and I thought we were getting smoking prohibited in some areas. So, how does one enforce that, I suppose, other than taking it upon yourself or calling bylaw?
Well, one thing I would say is that it's very difficult to enforce, but if you had, sorry about that. One thing I'd say, it's very difficult to enforce, but if you had signage, that allows the public to help enforce it. There's no way that you're going to get bylaw to regularly enforce it, but if someone can turn around and point to the sign that says no smoking, then it's a whole lot easier for them to make that comment. And I'd say that our signage for the beaches, although we've place marked them, I would say that our signage for no smoking is poor. We need to do more for sure. You know, the smoking, it's not only invasive for people who don't like it, which is unfair, but it's also a fire risk on all of our beaches. Right now, everything on that Okanagan Center beach, and I'm sure it's the same in Oyama, is tinder dry. It's just waiting for something to happen. You know, the grass is all long because there's been lots of rain. So it's very dangerous right now. And but it's very difficult for somebody from the neighborhood to say anything to anybody. And that's what you need. We need the public support in that, because, you know, we've got one bylaw person on, and that makes it difficult for them.
All right.
You know, it's difficult for them to enforce regular rules because if they're enforcing one, then they're unavailable to the rest of the community.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we need to improve our
Something
signage.
more signage. We are adjourned, and thank you very much. Good night, those of you who couldn't go. We're going to reconvene in camera.